Hi, welcome. Today we're going to be going over Seth's capabilities as a DPS in Zenless Zone 0. I'm going to be talking about what you can expect from him, what kind of stuff he performs well against, and also what to partner him with teammates-wise. Without further ado, let's go into it. Okay, so Seth's main point of damage would be his hold basic. So that is where he has, you see the blue bar in the top corner, that's full. He can hold his basic attack button and stab in. That is where I would say a majority of his damage comes from. He can gain up he can't do it without the blue bar, that's holding without having any resource, but he can gain it via EXing. So now we can get another stab in. Ignore the ult. He can get it via ulting. Stab. And he can also get it via chain attack, which I'll show here. He does passively gain this far from doing actions on the field, like defensive assist and stuff. However, you aren't really going to be building it that way ever. I've never really in a practical endgame combat gotten it that way. So basically, you're going to be weaving in your big damage, your ult, your hold EX, and your chain attack. But your main wave damage is going to be these hold basics, as you can sprinkle them in everywhere in between your damage. Another source of damage, I'd say, is the hold EX, which is you do that. You hold your E button and let him go do his thing. And also, fun fact, I'll segue that into, Seth doesn't need to be on field for most of this stuff. So what we can do is we can hold basic on Seth, swap off, and then do auto attacks on Nicole to apply a debuff. This is the same with the EX. The only thing Seth does need to be on field for is obviously his ultimate and obviously also his chain attacks. So do keep that in mind. But for stuff like after you've exhausted your big damage, your ult, your chain, you can do a lot of stuff on Nicole and Seth at the same time. But I will go over that later in stun. Okay, we're going to initiate a stun with Seth, and I'm going to show you what the ideal rotations for Seth in stun is going to be. So we're going to do this. There. Nicole into Seth. We can then hold basic on, swap off. Then do Nicole ult. Wait for Seth to finish his thing. Then we go to Seth ultimate. And stun has ended there. However, against boss enemies, you're going to be able to do a few more things, like maybe an EX and a hold. But the main focus is get both the chains off and get Seth's ult with all the debuffs and buffs up that are necessary. Seth very much shines as a stun winner DPS, but he can do stuff outside of that as well. But I will say most your points are going to be coming from these big stuns with these rotations. This enemy has a very short stun duration, but we can't really push bosses in the free practice mode, unfortunately. We're now going to go over a Deadly Assault that got 34k, just so I can show you that Seth can perform. Okay, so we've got a Deadly Assault score here that gets the 34k, and we're just going to go over roughly what made this run work. So you can see we're doing that basic attack chain, where we tap, 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 and then double tap at the end. Then we wait for the parry from Typhoon Destroyer to get the stun up. We're pushing towards stun now. And then we do Nicole, Seth chain, and we do Astra as well here, which can be nice for getting a few more decibels for your team. And then you can see, obviously, we're swapping between Nicole and Astra very rapidly. Nicole and Seth very rapidly, so they can both do their things on the field at the same time. Now we see I'm going back to that basic attack chain with the occasional use of an EX if it feels appropriate. But mostly, obviously, just that basic attack chain to build up some days and just wait for the boss to do his thing so you can stun it. So then we've got the stun rotation again. Not necessarily been in the same order this time, but all the debuffs and buffs are up, so things are working out well. Also, ignore the layout of this. This was done on stream, I believe. So yeah, we're building up for the next stun, dodging, just doing the thing. Very much standard to the usual. Obviously, I've not brought up the Nicole yet. Nicole, in my opinion, is a very nice teammate for Seth. I wouldn't necessarily it's the best, but they do jive together very well, and it's also a very free-to-play friendly unit, because obviously you get Nicole for free. And then you just need Astra as your only limited unit here. So you obviously can see you do stuff on Seth, and then you can swap to Nicole, because Seth doesn't need to be on field for a lot of his stuff. They just jive together very well. I believe this is the final stun? Yeah, this is the final stun. I think. Yeah, this is the final stun. So you can see Seth is we started off on like 27k, and we ended up stun on 33k. So that is 6,000-ish points in one stun. So yeah, Seth very much shines in stun and very much shines against Typhoon Destroyer as a boss specifically. but he does do well against the bosses as well, which I'll go into now. So Seth can go up against a few bosses in the Deadly Assault. Sheer Defense, again, I can't speak for, but if it's got an electric weakness, you can probably do it in ample time on Shiu. However, for Deadly Assault, it would be Miasma Priest, Typhoon Destroyer, Industrial Complex. Defile especially is a very good one. Not that Seth scores especially high on it, but Seth will clear it, which has been very nice for me personally, because not much goes well with Defiler on my account. Usually, before I started using Seth, I had to sacrifice an normal unit, and it just wasn't great. But just running Seth Nicole Astra against Defiler worked very well for me. So, also speaking of Nicole Astra, we're going to go over some teammates now, because it isn't just them for Seth, even though that's what I prefer. Okay, so here we've got a little tier list I made for all the teammates that Seth could possibly have. So as we see here, we've got I would only really regard the top 2 tiers. The third tier could be thought of if you literally don't even have these units in the top 2 tiers. The bottom 2 tiers I would not think about at all. It's just something you technically can do, but not necessarily something you should do. As you see, we've got the sub-DPS normal units down there, Lighter, which provides very little, Lycon, which also provides very little, and obviously Lucia, who's a Rupture support mainly, but does provide a little bit of crit damage. So yeah, these units in the bottom can do a little bit for Seth, but I still would not recommend it. Same with Panyan, who zero reason to run, except I think he gives 10% damage, maybe 30%, I'm not sure, but it's not, again, not worth thinking about. I'm not going to talk about the middling tier, it's just something you can run. It doesn't mean you should run it either, but it's slightly better. It's playable. So we're going to go with these top 2 tiers here. Nicole, I've spoken about why she's so good. You can run her as a sub DPS, you can have, she can do stuff off field while Seth is doing his thing. And then Dial-In. Dial-In is good. I haven't tested much yet, but she seems to perform a little bit better than Nicole does, even though I'm not as big of a fan as the way it plays, because in stun, there's not as much you can do, because you're not really running, you don't want to use Dial-In stuff, if the enemy's already stunned, you don't want to use your stuff. Same reason with Trigger, but Trigger with Engine I know is better than Nicole, even though I don't have her personally, so I can't test that. Astra would not run Seth without Astra ever. You could maybe substitute User her for Astra, as it's the big attack, but you don't want to sacrifice that big attack buff, ever. So I would always run some combination of Astra, and then Nicole, Dial-In, or Trigger. That is Seth's very best teams, and you can expect them to perform very well. We're going to go in the tier below now. For Orphe, I wouldn't run it, because it's not Seth doing the damage anymore. Orphe is a sub DPS who can just, realistically, she will out DPS Seth. But you can run it to clear, you can get through it. But it's not necessarily going to always work for Seth doing the big damage. It's going to be Orphe. User her is just an Astra replacement, really, if you don't have Astra. I would never run Astra and User her. I tried it, because I thought it might be good with the big attack buff, but it doesn't. So it's literally just if you do not have Astra, User her could work for you, possibly. King Yi, just a worse stunner than Dial-In and Trigger, but it is runnable. I think you can, King Yi, Astra can clear a decent few bosses, Typhoon being one of them, and stuff, but it's, again, nothing to think about. With the middling, I would only really use them as maybe a second teammate next to the perfect or the decent teammates. So if you have Nicole, you can run Nicole Lucy. However, I think you're going to be hitting 2 stars in Deadly Assault. You might not be clearing with it. But basically, middling you could replace one of the above with. And now we're going to go into builds and how you actually, run this Seth. First, I'm going to talk about skills, because Seth's core skill is not necessarily important to him doing damage, as it's anomaly support. However, the base attack increase and the energy regen is it's not something to not think about, basically. The base attack will increase your damage, and the base energy regen will give you more EXs in combat. However, it's not crazy important. You could probably clear on Seth without this, but I'd still recommend doing it. There's no reason not to. With skills, you don't need to max them out to 16 with crowns, but you can if you want. I like them very much, so I've chosen to, but being on 15 is fine. For equipment, I have gone 2-piece. However, you could run Woodpecker Electro if you want, 4-piece. You could run Puffer Electro 4-piece or Hormone Punk 4-piece, or even Thunder Metal 4-piece if that's gonna work for you, if you're proccing shock enough. But I've run 2-piece because it's consistent. I don't have to worry about keeping uptime on sets, which is nice. That's my personal reason for running it. For engine, I've gone a stat stick crit engine, but Seth's engine, personal engine, is fine. It gives him more energy regen, and it gives him a little bit more anomaly build-up, which could be good if you're running Thunder Metal. But a crit stat stick does tend to perform better for me, because if we look over here, 3,000 attack and 63% crit rate. If I swap over to Seth's engine, it's only a 140-ish buff to my attack, which isn't really worth it considering you lose 24% crit rate, which is really important for hitting your EX ult and chain crits, even though obviously your basic hold will also crit. However, I just realized I haven't gone over that yet, so let me go to that. Seth's Mindscapes are very important for him being a DPS. I would never recommend running Seth as a DPS unless you have M6. All of his Mindscapes don't really do much except the first one with it gives you, not the first one, sorry, the second one, that gives you it gives you an immediate charge of your hold basic, so you have one from the start of combat, which is nice. It's not huge, but it's nice. It lets you start combat in a alright way. M6 though, I would say is very important. It means your hold stab basic will always crit, and it also increases the damage by 60%, which I'd say for Seth to perform as a DPS it's a must. It's very much a must. For my personal stats, because I know obviously seeing 34,000 on Seth, I do have kind of insane stats. However, you don't need this. You could probably get by with 170 crit damage, 50% crit rate, and about 2,800 attack. It will be a decent bit less damage, but you will be able to clear most stuff that way. However, expect it to be a little bit harder with Defiler, because on Defiler I get around 22,000 right now. So with these stats, so you do want to push Seth to have as high stats as possible. And now we're going to go into like final expectations for Seth and just finish up the video. Thank you for watching my Seth Lowell DPS guide. I hope you guys took something away from this. Perhaps maybe you'll want to try Seth DPS now. However, I will, little disclaimer, I think Seth DPS is not a forever thing, because as the HP increases, it's getting harder and harder to clear with him. But yeah, other than that, I hope you guys have enjoyed this. I might do more Zenless content in the future, but I'm not quite sure. But yeah, thank you for watching, and I hope you guys have a nice rest of your days. Bye-bye.